Hello, I'm Chris Hartwell, and welcome to The Heartbeat, the place where I talk about just a few of the things that make this little guy tick. Today, I'm going to be talking about episode 6 of season 2 of AMC's Better Call Saul. Join me, won't you? So, per usual, we will be talking about a few of the positives in this week's episode, a few of the negatives, as well as what we're looking forward to in the coming weeks on Better Call Saul. Now, straight off the bat, I really have to praise this episode for actually, for the first time, getting me to legitimately consider, if only for a moment, maybe Saul Goodman is who Jimmy McGill should become. Maybe he really is better off sitting in that pool and conning sleazy stockbrokers. Now, yes, this is a very broken and warped train of thought, but one that I think the writers are very intentionally trying to get us as the audience to legitimately consider, which is very ambitious and extremely praiseworthy. Now, just track with me here for a moment. When I first started watching Better Call Saul, I viewed Saul Goodman as the bad guy and Jimmy McGill as the good guy, not too dissimilar to how I viewed the corrupt, arrogant, greedy Heisenberg compared to the admirable, upstanding, and loving Walter White. Saul Goodman was always the inevitable, unfortunate endgame for Jimmy McGill, the person that he would someday become when he finally threw in the towel on being an upstanding, admirable, loving person. And to fully take on that mantle of being Saul Goodman, he would have to completely throw away and forsake all of Jimmy McGill, all that he truly was. So Goodman is the person he would be forced to become because the big bad world pushed him there. And really what the show has done from that opening black and white sequence until now is really shown us that Goodman has always been there. And this actually isn't some prequel show about Jimmy McGill eventually breaking bad and becoming Saul Goodman. No, this is actually about Saul Goodman attempting to break good and become Jimmy McGill. And what this episode did specifically is actually go one step beyond that. One step beyond just making us understand that, but actually believe that maybe, just maybe, it's a good thing that Jimmy McGill stopped trying to be someone he's not. At the top of this episode especially, we were shown just how crummy this man's life has now become now that he's broken good, externally at least, by accepting the job from Davis and Maine and submitting to the rule-enforcing Aaron. And speaking of that opening montage, I just have to rabbit trail here for a second and say, what a beautifully shot and edited sequence, one that really does fall in line with what Vince Gilligan was recently saying about their desire to emulate certain elements of The Godfather. The Godfather teaches you confidence in stillness and quietude. Coppola had the confidence to hang back wide and not cut until it was time to cut. The Godfather teaches you restraint. But to jump back to talking about Jimmy, what the last few episodes have really shown us are alternatives to his current upstanding lifestyle and how they actually aren't wholly abhorrent. So, from what we've been shown anyways, the opposite of following the rules is making a fantastic TV commercial, or bribing someone with a Beanie Baby, or what would amount to embarrassing a sleazy womanizer. And this, my friends, is how this show will crush us. It will slowly chip away at us until we fully believe that what Jimmy really needs is that cozy office, those colorful suits, and those catchy TV ads. And right when they get us to start chanting, "Be Saul, be Saul, be Saul," they'll give us that. But at the cost of everything in Jimmy's life, everything that's brought color to his existence, not the least of which being Kim, whose arc I really feel like I predicted accurately last week. It's my guess that she'll continue down this road of instigating cons and slipping morally until she's dead. Not necessarily physically dead like Marco, but emotionally and spiritually dead, crashing into a place where she can't even take a job from Swiker and Coakley, much less desire one. And seeing that and understanding that he was the one that lit the fuse on her life and being destroyed by it, Jimmy will eventually do what Kim did this week. Because as Kim was sitting there at that bar, she was probably thinking something like, I'm miserable right now. And when was the last time I was happy? And like a recovering alcoholic or someone trying to kick an eating disorder, she does understand that that thing that she's craving right now, she knows that it's not good for her. But she also realizes it's provided me some form of happiness, momentary though it was, in the past, and that for her was pulling that con with Jimmy. Or like she said to him, I keep thinking of you floating in that pool. And so back to Jimmy, what has always made him happy? What did he turn to when Chuck stabbed him in the back, or when Cliff forced him to abide by the boring rules? Slippin' Jimmy. So what will he turn to when he realizes that he's blown up the life of the person he cares about most in the world? Well, my theory anyways is Saul Goodman. And though it's a bit more of a stretch of a prediction, I do also feel like the writers are continuing to plant seeds that will lead to and grow into Kim stabbing Hamlin in the back. He's just been so unfairly harsh to her, and is kind of begging in a way for a good backstabbing. And I really also loved what Mike Slovis, the director, did in what I call the anti-West Wing shot, it being a walk and no talk, and how it just really heightened the tension between them. And when it comes to Kim, who's really become a proper Jesse Pinkman, going from a solid side character in the first season to a fantastic lead in the second, I personally love the fact that her future is still very much just conjecture at this point, because what that means, on this show anyways, is her growth in kind of how it's being presented is a lot more unspoken, and therefore more realistic and subtle, and also we get to kind of watch a character show us how they feel versus just tell us. Like refusing a Moscow Mule over lunch with Swiker, but then overindulging in the exact same drink a couple scenes later. And not only does this approach invite me to engage more as a viewer, but it also makes the character just a bit more relatable. There are just so many moments on this week's episode where I could just see in Kim's eyes that longing to not only understand where she's going, but where she wants to go. And as always, our good friend Mike stands in contrast to all of this, and though, just like Jimmy and Kim, he is paying the price for doing the right thing, which for him was choosing not to kill Tuco, he's still absolutely refusing to let himself regret that choice. He's just too clearly seen what happens when he takes the easy way out, and he's just clinging to that memory of being a dirty cop and how it got his son killed to really kind of like resist the urge to fall back into that pattern. I mean, after pulling a proper Macaulay Culkin with the doormat as to discover the two-armed men that have broken into his house, all he really does is smack them around a bit and tell them to try harder next time if they want to scare him. And to again just praise this episode's director, Mike Slovis, who actually also acted as Breaking Bad's cinematographer, the build-up to that confrontation was just so augmented by that epic tracking shot through the house. And even more noteworthy, the length of the shot wasn't about being flashy or showy, though it was quite cool, but about maximizing that tension, because whether we consciously recognize it or not, our brain really is waiting for that cut, and the longer it's denied, the longer we hold our breath, or the tighter we squeeze to the person's arm next to us. And also, I really love the tag on the end of the sequence, with Mike washing the blood off his gun and hand, which he now can't stop from shaking. Because it really told me this man has been holding back because he still sees his son's blood on his hands. But whether you see it as rage or kind of recognize frailty, what the shaking in Mike's hands told me was, he's not going to be able to hold back much longer, and boy, does Hector know how to push him a whole heck of a lot closer by threatening his family. I mean, you want to know how the writers are going to evolve Mike from being the man that smacks the bad guys around to being the man who encourages others to never mistakenly take those kind of half measures? This is how. And to go back to The Godfather, I certainly saw that film influencing the way the subsequent diner scene played out between Mike and Hector, and not just in the setting, or in my belief that Mike was at any second about to shoot Hector in the neck, but in the characters' motivations really all being about honor and family. Honestly though, just like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, it's really Nacho that gives these scenes such great stakes. Not only does Michael Mando bring such a fantastically empathetic energy to the character, I'm also just constantly watching his scenes in dread, not knowing if he's actually going to make it to the next episode or not. And of course, we need to talk about the reappearance of the twins. First of all, yes, it was great to see them again, and they did in one shot really tell me, oh dear, Mike really is up against some formidable foes now, and also, being a huge fan of Breaking Bad, it is great anytime this show continues to connect itself to that. To nitpick though, I'm actually going to compare the twins' depiction in this episode to the depiction of Hobbiton in the first of the Hobbit films, An Unexpected Journey. Now just track with me here for a second. In the first of the Lord of the Rings films, The Fellowship of the Ring, though we're seeing Hobbiton chronologically after the events of The Hobbit, when the film came out in 2001, that was in fact the first time we'd seen that environment, and Peter Jackson and company really made sure they introduced it right. Not just with a couple establishing shots, but actually having us move in and around it, during day, at dusk, at nighttime, ensuring to ascribe specific landmarks, colors, and music to all of it. And then The Hobbit came out, and you could really just see how much less attention was given to establish that environment. That Peter Jackson was just assuming that this was the second time that audiences were entering it. Which, like the cousins from Breaking Bad, may be true, but for some people like my wife, this was their first time seeing the characters. And there just simply wasn't as much care and love given to their introduction here as there was on the third season of Breaking Bad. And to sort of make them even more throwaway, from the way they're dressed, with their suits and those memorable boots, to how they carry themselves, standing side by side with their stone face expressions, to their theme music, which includes the now iconic lawnmower sound effect, all of that told me these two men are, for all intents and purposes, the exact same men we encountered on Breaking Bad. So, unlike Crazy 8, who is still a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed employee of Tampico, or like Hector Salamanca, who is still able to walk and speak, we're not seeing any uniquely different sides to those characters. And yes, of course, I am nitpicking here, and am ultimately fine with certain characters just kind of being fun Easter eggs for the longtime fans more than anything else. I just felt like the twins were one of the few times that the writers of the show weren't maximizing their Breaking Bad cameos. Anyways, that's kind of the end of my review for this week's episode on Better Call Saul. I would love to know what you guys thought of the episode, though. Comment below. Let me know. Are you, like me, just a little bit dubious about Swiker and what he's trying to do with Kim? Is he kind of actually trying to make things better for himself by getting her off the Sandpiper case? Or is he actually trying to help her? Comment below. Let me know. Also, please do subscribe. I'm going to continue to review films and television on this channel, and I would love for you all to stay up to date on all of those things. But for now, I'm Chris Hartwell. This is The Heartbeat. Thank you for joining me.